What's up, everybody? Chester ARP Church Devotional Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. We are in Esther chapter 4 today. Esther chapter 4. As we gather together, we'll read beginning in verse 4. When Esther's young women and her eunuchs came and told her, the queen was deeply distressed. She sent garments to clothe Mordecai so that he might take off his sackcloth, but he would not accept them. Then Esther called for Hathach, one of the king's eunuchs, who had been appointed to attend her. And he ordered him to go to Mordecai to learn what this was and why it was. Hathach went out to Mordecai in the open square of the city in front of the king's gate, and Mordecai told him all that had happened to him, and the exact sum of money that Haman had promised to pay into the king's treasuries for the destruction of the Jews. Mordecai also gave him a copy of the written decree issued in Susa for their destruction, that he might show it to Esther and explain it to her and command her to go to the king to beg for his favor and plead with him on behalf of her people. Then Hathach went and told Esther what Mordecai had said. Then Esther spoke to Hathach and commanded him to go to Mordecai and say, all the king's servants and all the people of the king's provinces know that if any man or woman goes to the king inside the inner court without being called, there is but one law, to be put to death, except the one to whom the king holds out the golden scepter, so that he may live. But as for me, I have not been called to come in to the king these 30 days. And they told Mordecai what Esther had said. Then Mordecai told them to reply to Esther, do not think to yourself that in the king's palace you will escape any more than all the other Jews. For if you keep silent at this time, relief and deliverance will rise for the Jews from another place, but you and your father's house will perish. And who knows whether you have not come to the kingdom for such a time as this? Then Esther told them to reply to Mordecai, go gather all the Jews to be found in Susa, and hold a fast on my behalf, and do not eat or drink for 3 days, or night or day. I and my young women will also fast as you do. Then I will go to the king, though it is against the law, and if I perish, I perish. Mordecai then went away and did everything as Esther had ordered him. And now this is really kind of a major turning point in the story of Esther. In fact, I would argue this is probably the most important point in the story of Esther and Esther's participation in the deliverance of the Jews. Mordecai had learned about all of the upcoming destruction that Haman had planned for the Jews. We've talked about that at length, and Mordecai found himself mourning and grieving that reality, wearing sackcloth and ashes, crying out in the middle of the town, and he was quite frankly an embarrassment to Esther. That's what we find here at the beginning of verse 4 and following in chapter 4. The young women and the eunuchs came to her and said, hey, listen, Queen Esther, your uncle is out there acting like a fool. He's dressed in sackcloth and ashes. He's crying out. He's screaming. He's being loud. He's lamenting. He's crying. He's causing all kind of a ruckus and just carrying on. And Queen Esther says, hey, listen, go give him these clothes. She's concerned about him. She's concerned about how he's going to look and make her look, but also how he looks in society. Hey, listen, go help him out. Go get him what he needs. Get him some food, perhaps. Give him some time away. Give him some clothes and say, hey, listen, settle down here. You're making yourself look like a fool. And so they go and they do that. However, Mordecai says, hey, listen, I want you to get word back to Esther and tell her why I'm doing this. I'm doing this because Haman has decided that he's going to kill all the Jews. And a decree has been made that we will all die on the 13th day of the last month of the year. And so I need you to tell her she's got to do what she's got to do to help free the Jews from this burden and to ensure they have safety long term. And so the eunuch goes back and he says to Esther, hey, listen, Mordecai says this is what's taking place. So Esther sends word back to Mordecai. She says, hey, listen, I can't do anything. I can't go in before the king. Everybody knows if you go before the king without being summoned by the king, you will surely die unless the king holds out his golden scepter. I can't go in. I haven't been asked to come in for 30 days. Chances are he doesn't want me to come into his throne room. He doesn't want me to come before him right now, and if I do, I will die. I can't do anything to help you in essence. Mordecai responds, and says, hey, listen, don't think that you're going to survive. You will be found out. Your identity will be found out inside the temple, inside the palace, and as a result of that, you will die. You and your family, you will all die. You're not going to keep this silent, and those who are in your family are going to be held the same standard as everybody else, and they're going to be killed just like everybody else. So you need to do something because you think, well, maybe these people on the outside, but you're going to try to save your own hide, as it were. You need to do something. And who knows, Mordecai says, maybe you've come to the kingdom for just as time as this. God will raise up deliverance for the Jews in his own way if you don't do it. But maybe you are the one who is put in place in order to be the deliverer that God chooses to use to deliver the Jews from the hands of Haman. And as a result of that, maybe you are the one that you're going to have the opportunity to participate in the blessing of God's deliverance for the Jews. Now, he's going to deliver them. We know that he will because he makes a promise to keep his people. But you, Esther, are going to die, as well as your family, regardless. So either go before the king now and potentially die and take that risk, and maybe God will use your sacrifice and your dependence and your faith for his glory and to advance his kingdom and to free the Jewish people, or maybe he won't. But who knows? Maybe you've come into the kingdom for such a time as this. She says, okay, I'll go in. If I die, I die. But I'm going to go. I love this. This is a wonderful interaction between Esther and her uncle that's brokered by other people, but it's this conversation back and forth between them, and it is a reminder, one, of God's providence and God's purposes in all things, that he will always do his will and make sure his will is accomplished. Two, it is a statement on God's grace and how he chooses to use people for his purposes and his glory. Three, it's a statement on faith. You must be willing to trust God. You must be willing to put your hands in his hands and put your life, in his hands and allow him to do what he wishes, regardless of how that will impact you. And so it's faith that enables you to overcome fear. And it's also a lesson in mentorship, where an older saint, an older believer, is able to challenge and encourage a younger believer to take the steps that he or she needs to take in order to accomplish the will that God has for that particular person. Mordecai encourages Esther. He emboldens Esther. He strengthens Esther in his words and his constant encouragement of her. And so I think those are wonderful lessons that we learn and things that we see. Remember, this is a story for Jews who are there, a story of overcoming, a story of victory, a story of rescue, a story of survival. And we are called to live as exiles in this world as we long for the world to come. And we are called to follow the Lord in the world we live, and live the lives that he's called us to live for his glory, trusting him all the way. You guys take care. God bless you. I'll catch you next time.